Welcome to Prime Time in the Library, where we come together as a community and share what we're learning and experiencing in this place as well as the wider world. It's a collaborative project between the Friends of the Bethel Library and several offices around campus. We record most of our programming, including this event, and they can be viewed later in the digital library. Let me tell you about a primetime presentation coming up next Thursday, May 5th. Using personal stories and professional experiences from her sabbatical in Ukraine in fall of 2021, as well as her disability education expertise, Dr. Katie Bonowitz will present on past, present, and future needs in the area of special education and inclusion in Ukraine. But today, in this cruelest of Aprils, we're here to celebrate the art form that elevates, concentrates, and intensifies language to gorgeous, enlightening, exhilarating effect. It's been 3 years since we've been able to do this live, and I don't know about you, but I'm really ready for this. We have an amazing lineup today, beginning with a group of readers who are finalists in the Jerry Healy Poetry Prize, an award established to honor the memory of beloved English professor Jerry Healy, who left a deep and lasting impression on Bethel, and he was, to the end of his long life, a lover of poetry. And I've just learned that his wife, Millie, passed away just this week. The theme for this year's contest is food. These poems will be published in a special edition of The Coeval, which is Bethel's literary magazine. That's going to be available later in the digital library as well. And the winners for this prize are going to be awarded in the Seniors Symposium for the English Department. It's going to be held on Tuesday, May 10th at 4:45 in the Olson Boardroom. I give you the Healy finalists.
Hello, my name is Madeline Aafedt, and I'm going to be reading my poem, The Kind of Fear That Can Scare You to Death. Food is my greatest fear. It's a fatal fear, a final fear, the kind of fear that can scare you to death if you let it. I almost let it. It's a fear that makes your hair fall out, makes your fingernails flaky and cracked, makes your body fight to keep itself warm on the hottest days. It's a fear that makes you fragile, with porcelain bones and pained expressions you try to pass off as smiles. It steals your spirit and your strength, if you let it. It's a fear that has your family crying in the parking lot of a restaurant, has your sister staring at her own dinner because if you're fat, then what am I? It's a fear that makes your friends fade away to whispers at the end of a table you don't sit at anymore, so it's just you and your cyclical, cynical thoughts. It isolates you, if you let it. It's a fear that makes you a liar, a lightheaded shell of a person who creeps around their own life like a coward, counting calories and feigning control, saying no, always no. It's a fear that steals your freedom and becomes your entire identity if you let it. Food is my greatest fear. It's a fatal fear, a final fear, the kind of fear that can scare you to death if you let it. I didn't let it. And next will be Grace Pust.
This is my poem, Newport, Minnesota. I saw you outside the speedway. The yoked sun mixes in the scrambled sky. Its setting never seemed so long. And you with a plastic bag of ding-dongs and a blue Powerade. I dare to join you in your pride. Like an act of defiance, we sit side by side, asphalt indents on our thighs, chocolate smeared on our sugary lips. From the refinery to the factory to the testing facility, from here to eternity, melted in the sky, ice cream and milk, this hostess treat tastes like a lightning storm. And you, electric, tethered by that hot rubber, lest God or the wind strike you down. I bear witness now to your chocolate-covered sermon. As you preach on your sidewalk mount, you talk of teaching the sky to paint, like a child eating Cheerios, not like a painter. And we feast with your blessing to gorge ourselves on this mess and to devour the night. Saccharine Seraphim. Next is Rachel Blood with Synesthesia.
Hi.
I'm Rachel, and this is Synesthesia. I think that cotton candy tastes like untainted summers of hope and carnival lights. And popcorn smells the way you feel on the green corduroy couch, 7 years old, dog at your feet, family on all sides watching Disney reruns in the age of commercial breaks. I think that peppermint flakes taste like Christmas and a live fireplace in the warmth of home, and pumpkin pie feels like baking with Dad 2 times every year, stifling laughs as he tickles you behind the counter while Mom makes you post by the Facebook page you pretend to hate. I know that nourishment comes not from the picnic table plates on the 4th of July, but from the ones who feed and clothe and love you, tears and joy both, who plant their wisdom like small seeds in the soil of your mind and watch it grow and give it sunlight, food for thought and heart. And next we will hear from Barrett Fisher.
I just want to say that this is one of the poems I received because I subscribe to Poem a Day, which is a free service from the American Academy of Poets. So go to poets.org and sign up and you get some really good poems. This is a poem by a poet named Nicole Brown, and the title of the poem is Prayer to Be Still and Know. Lord, let my ears go secret agent, each a microphone so hot it picks up things silent, reverbing even the hum of stone close to its eager silver grill. Let my ears forget years trained to human chatter wired into every room, even those empty except of me, each broadcast and jingle tricking me into being less lonely than I am. Let my ears forget the clack and rumble, our tamborining and fireworking distractions, our roar of applause. Let my hands quit their clapping and rest in a new kind of prayer, one that doesn't ask but listens, palms up in my lap. Like an owl, let me triangulate icy shuffling under snow as of old. Let me not just name the name when I spot a soundtrack of birdsong, but understand the notes to each syrinx as a singular missive, begging, flirting, fussing. Each companion call and alarm as sharp with desire and fear as my own. Prick my ears, Lord. Make them hungry satellites, have your way with their tiny bones. Teach the drum within that dark to drum again. Because within the hammering of woodpecker is a long tongue unwinding like a tape measure from inside his pileated head, darting dinner from the pine's soft bark. And somewhere, I know, is a spider who births a filament of silk and flies it to the next branch. Somewhere, a fiddlehead unstrings its violin into the miracle of fern. And somewhere, a mink not made into a coat cracks open a mussel shell, and with her mouth full of that gray meat, yawns. Those are your sounds, are they not? Do not deny it, Lord. Do not deny me. I do not know those songs, nor do I know the hush a dandeliion's face makes when it closes, surrenders, then goes to seed. No, I only know the sound my own breath makes as I wish and blow that perfect globe away. I only know the small, satisfactory popping of roots when I call it weed and yank it from the yard. There is a language of all you created. Hear me, please. I just want to be still enough to hear. Right here, Lord, I want to be. Next is Joshua Lopez with a poem.
Hi everybody, my name is Joshua Lopez, and this poem I want to read for you guys is called Aafedt. Before I read it, I want to say that Aafedt is a word that means precious water in Nahuatl, which is an indigenous language in Mexico. It's inspired from a friend of mine, and her name is Aafedt, so this is specifically for her. Precious, they call her, beyond any price. Eternity lives in her veins, while melanin lives in her skin. Her ancestors live in her DNA, while her parents live in her hair, eyes, ears, and blood. Precious, they call her. No amount of colonization can take away her history. Her culture lives in her words, while her dance lives in her body. Her love lives in her lungs, and her actions live in her heart. Precious, they call her. Like water, both flowing as life and everything they come into contact with. When you see her and she gives you her tears wrapped in her heart, standing on her lungs, biting onto her culture, holding on to her dance, know she's giving you something precious because she is precious. Once you look her in the eyes and see the ocean of evil she's seen, you'll understand why she has her guard up in the middle of every desert where no man lives to please her. Her heart knows the river she has become through the flowing of truth that has been drumming in her soul since the day she was born into a path that guided her to the journey no colonizer could keep up with or be willing to step into. As she walks as an ocean, every boy is too afraid to fall in love with her, because if they do, they will drown in the eternity that lives in her veins. They will stumble by the dance that lives in her body, and they will be stunned at the love that lives in her lungs. As she runs like a river, every little girl aspires to swim in her. The way her skin is kissed by the sun, the little girls too want to be desirable enough to capture attention from the light. The way her culture lives in her words, her brother and sisters are jealous of the tattoos translated in her lungs, that foreign noises that reside in her words. Her parents see the lake of truth she's cried on the streets, and they find puddles of her blood all over the protests, along with all her sisters' hair, eyes, and ears. All of these women are precious like her. Her actions formed her heart that created the revolution in her sea. She is precious as a river, as an ocean, as a woman, and as a daughter. I think it's only appropriate to call her Precious Water. Next up is Kathy Nevins.
Good morning. Before I read, I want to extend an invitation to all of you to come to the importance of being earnest tonight, tomorrow night, and Saturday night at 7:30. We have also a, what do you call it? Afternoon matinee. Thank you very much. Matinee on Sunday at 2:30. I think it is critical that you also know that this is the last show for where we will have a majority of the cast being theater majors. And so I see 3 of them in the room right now. And come support them. Thank you. So I have chosen in the last 30 seconds to read a poem that I wrote in 1980 something. And it was from some experiences that I was having in this place back then. So the poem may feel a bit odd to you, because I think we have made some transformative choices, not the least of which, when you hear from Dale, I think you'll understand how we connect, how what we're doing connects. So this is called A Hymn, Hymn, to Her. When you say he, you don't include me. It's not a big problem, I'm supposed to agree. But when you say men, you don't include me. If I try to point out your omission of she, you shrug and say lightly, oh, you know what I mean. Later you mumble, those irritant she's, why do they bother? What's wrong with our he's? What's wrong with your he's? You talk of the evil that men do. That's fine. Then the sins of the fathers are no sins of mine. But sometimes you tell me Christ died for all men. And somewhere inside I start weeping again. Like a turnstile that freezes your bruise and bruises my she, your he's become barriers that keep you from me. And I feel excluded, devalued, unseen, not part of the kingdom, something evil, unclean. Don't you know? Don't you know? Christ died for me. I am of the kingdom. Don't you want me to be? And still in their prayers, the brothers say men, forgetting, not knowing, they exclude me again. We have Lexi Folen, who's going to be reading.
Hi, I'm Lexi Folen. I'm going to be reading 2 short original poems, a light one and a little darker one. The first one is called New Beginnings. New and unfamiliar, scary to say the least, I shakily stride forward to tackle this new beast, wondering how to figure out a new routine, technique, hoping it will be worth it and break my mundane streak, hoping to look back one day and see what I have built, hoping to be proud one day, much pride, little guilt. This next one is called Questions. Intricate patterns of fine-tuned pain, lulling me to sleep, driving me insane. Questions in my head, endless words on paper, no answers in my heart to make me feel safer. Questioning everything, the things I thought I knew, holding them at a distance, learning if they're true, laying them back down again, some figured out, some not, entrusting them to God, who knows my every thought. Next up will be Durie.
Well, according to Poetry, the Poetry Foundation, which publishes Poetry magazine, among all female poets of the English-speaking world in the 19th century, none was held in higher critical esteem or was more admired for the independence and courage of her views than Elizabeth Barrett Browning. During the years of her marriage to Robert Browning, her literary reputation surpassed his, to the point that when visitors came, they often came to see her primarily. An example of kind of the far reach of her fame may be seen in the fact that a framed portrait of Barrett Browning hung in the bedroom of Emily Dickinson, whose life had been transfigured by the poetry, to use Dickinson's language, of that foreign lady. Her humane point of view manifests itself in her poems, which redressed many forms of social injustice, such as slavery in America, the labor of children in the mines and the mills of England, the oppression of the Italian people by the Austrians, and the restrictions forced upon women in the 19th century society. I want to read 5 lines from Elizabeth Barrett Browning's poem, Aurora Leigh. And in this poem, she seeks to redress or to correct what she calls the great wrong. That great wrong in this poem is the separating of the natural and the spiritual from one another. At the climactic end of the poem are these 5 lines, which I'm going to read twice. And as Dr. Nevins has pointed to, I'm going to adjust in a way in which I am pretty confident that Elizabeth Barrett Browning would allow for. Earth's crammed with heaven, and every common bush afire with God. But only he who sees takes off his shoes. The rest sit round it and pluck blackberries, and daub their natural faces unaware. Earth's crammed with heaven, and every common bush afire with God. But only she who sees takes off her shoes. The rest sit round it and pluck blackberries, and daub their natural faces unaware. Next, we're going to have a song from Theresa Drexler.
Hi, my name is Theresa Drexler, and I will be performing the song Pretty Lies from the musical The Count of Monte Cristo with music by Frank Wildhorn. Fathers tell such pretty lies to little girls. Life is good and life is fair for little girls. When you smile and close your eyes, those pretty lies seem true. I saw my life perfectly. It would be smoother than glass, everything in its place, order and calm, wedding ring, easy grace, all of my dreams in my reach, coming true, Albert and me, doing the things lovers do. I saw my life prosperous, safe and sound, father and me, passing time, skies blue, mother would be happy, I'm happy too, life would sail on, pretty lies full of bliss. I saw my life changing, but never changing like this. Such pretty lies masquerading as duty are not. Everything dies, even little girl storybook plans and dreams. And give me the world finally as it is, not black and white, compromise as it is, not wrong or right, pretty lies as it is, Albert and me, little girl, foolish boy, willing to live like a man who is willing to die, to justify his pretty lies. Thank you. And next we have original poems from the social work department.
So it was about 2 weeks ago, I think, we got to spend 2 days with Reverend Dr. Ron Bell from Camp United Methodist Church. Pastor Bell is one of our community partners through the Bethel FSU Partnership. And those 2 days were time for us to rest, reflect, connect, and heal. And at the end of our time together, we co-wrote these poems. This process was passed on to Pastor Bell through some of the men that he works with at Stillwater Prison. And so what we did was we took these pieces of paper and we folded them up in an accordion. And then each one of us wrote one line, and then we passed it to the next person, read that line, folded it over, and wrote another line. And then at the end, we each had our poem. So the way I see this is it's just going to be one poem with a couple different stands to it. So here's the first part of this poem. Today I ran for 30 minutes. The wind blew through my hair. The warm breeze cooled my face. And I said to myself, I'm here. Home. Here. I'm also home. With love and laughter and breath, I am also full. I hear the still, small voice of the Creator calling me, praying for the deep spirit of discernment. When I hear the call of the Creator, I will be still and spend time with our Creator.
Today, where are we going in here?
You have to come up here. Next to side.
Today, the sun will hold me down. I will feel the fire, warmth, and healing power. I pray for the power that cultivates a deeper sense of humility. Today I choose to see the good in myself and others. Today I will give space for all the day brings. Tomorrow I'll be a better person than yesterday. God is love, and God loves me.
Today, I will exhale deeply into the wind, diving deep into the ocean of kindness. I pray for the Spirit to cultivate kindness that is not transactional. Today, I choose to value relationships. I will reflect on the joy of a moment spent with another. Today, I'm very thankful to be a member of this community. With each person I meet, I will find beauty and call that good.
I will notice and acknowledge happiness. I will fill my cup with joy on purpose. I will drink from the fountain of forgiveness, and I pray for forgiveness that leads to deeper reconciliation and inner liberation. I will do the work to understand myself. I will honor who I am and who I am becoming. Today I become loving myself.
I pray that I have the spirit to use grace in a caring and inclusive manner. This is a harbor, a deep harbor of grace and divine love. This is my land, my landing place for my soul to rest, safe in the knowledge that I am enough, that I am loved. So I will sit, rest, pause, and be. I will remember that God loves me and holds me close. Today I will be better than yesterday. Today I will breathe in with hope for tomorrow. And next is Edie Shapolsky, and that's me. Hi, I'm Edie, and from the Department of Social Work, and I really am a lover of poetry. And actually, when Dale was speaking, I was quickly thinking of pivoting and reading something from Lines Composed Above Tintern Abbey by Wordsworth, because it's such a beautiful sort of healing piece for me. But what I decided to read was a poem by D.H. Lawrence called Snake. And when I was a little girl, my beloved father, who passed away a number of years ago, would come almost every night, and oftentimes by heart would recite poems like this, or like The Cremation of Sam McGee, or he would play a piece of classical music and sort of tell me what he was imagining in his mind. So he planted this deep love of poetry and music in me. I find poetry to be very applicable to the work of social work because it talks about the search for goodness and kindness and beauty and struggle and meaning. And I think that's true about this poem too. And I was like, I'm incredibly moved by the students and what you've presented here today. And I chose this because it tells a story, and we all have a story to tell. So, Snake by D.H. Lawrence. A snake came to my water trough on a hot, hot day, and I, in pajamas for the heat, to drink there. In the deep, strange, scented shade of the dark carob tree, I came down the steps with my pitcher, and must wait, must stand and wait, for there he was at the trough before me. He reached down from a fissure in the earth wall in the gloom, and trailed his yellow, brown slackness soft-bellied down over the edge of the stone trough, and rested his throat upon the stone bottom. And where the water had dripped from the tap in a small clearness, he sipped with his straight mouth, softly drank through his straight gums into his long, slack body, silently. Someone was before me at my water trough, and I, like a second comer, waiting. He lifted his head from his drinking as cattle do, and looked at me vaguely as drinking cattle do, and flickered his two-forked tongue from his lips and mused a moment, and stooped and drank a little more, being earth brown, earth golden from the burning bowels of the earth on the day of Sicilian July, with Etna smoking. The voice of my education said to me he must be killed, for in Sicily the black snakes are innocent, the gold are venomous. And voices in me said, if you were a man, you would take a stick and break him now and finish him off. But must I confess how I liked him? How glad I was he had come like a guest in quiet to drink at my water trough and depart peaceful, pacified and thankless into the burning bowels of this earth. Was it cowardice that I dared not kill him? Was it perversity that I longed to talk to him? Was it humility to feel so honored? I felt so honored. And yet those voices, if you were not afraid, you would kill him. And truly I was afraid. I was most afraid. But even so, honored still more that he should seek my hospitality from out the dark door of the secret earth. He drank enough and lifted his head dreamily as one who is drunken and flickered his tongue like a forked knight on the air, so black, seeming to lick his lips, and looked around like a god unseeing into the air, and slowly turned his head, and slowly, very slowly, as if thrice a dream, proceeded to draw his slow length curving round and climb again the broken bank of my wall face. And as he put his head into that dreadful hole, and as he slowly drew up, snake easing his shoulders, and entered farther, a sort of horror, a sort of protest against his withdrawing into that horrid black hole, deliberately going into the blackness, and slowly drawing himself after, overcame me now his back was turned. I looked round. I put down my pitcher, and I picked up a clumsy log and threw it at the water trough like a clatter. I think it did not hit him, but suddenly that part of him that was left behind convulsed in an undignified haste, writhed like lightning, and was gone into the black hole, the earth-lipped fissure in the wall front, at which, in the intense still noon, I stared with fascination. And immediately I regretted it. I thought, how paltry, how vulgar, what a mean act. I despised myself and the voices of my accursed human education. And I thought of the albatross. And I wished he would come back, my snake. For he seemed to me again like a king in exile, uncrowned in the underworld, now due to be crowned again. And so I missed my chance with one of the lords of life, and I have something to expiate, a pettiness. Thank you. Next is Rhonda.
The next group of poems that we have are by two people who couldn't be here with us today. So these are pre-recorded. And the first group of poems is by Ruben Rivera, who is reading from his newly published book, Z is for Zapatazo. He asked me to extend his regrets. He really wanted to be here. But alas, he is doing a Shalom seminar right now. However, if you would like to hear him read live from his book and also have an opportunity to buy a signed copy, you could do that this weekend on Saturday at Eat My Words bookstore in Northeast Minneapolis at 2 p.m. And if you're interested in more background for his book, he gave a really nice interview that's published on a website called The Feathered Quill. And then the second poet is Ruslana Westerlund. She is a Ukrainian educator and activist who serves on the board of Wisconsin Ukrainians, a nonprofit organization that's working passionately on behalf of that beleaguered country. And they're accepting donations for medical supplies and other things. So.
Hello, my name is Ruben Rivera, and I recently retired from Bethel after nearly 24 years, mostly as a professor of history, in the last 5 or 6 as the VP for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. The following 2 poems come from my book just recently published, Z is for Zapatazo, Poems Between the Spaces. Most of that book is poetry, there's one memoir and then a short story. This first poem is titled Lazarus, and yes, all the spellings are deliberate. It imagines a black slave preaching to fellow slaves in what were called the hush harbors, away from the oversight of the master. And they're preachers who would preach themes like slaves obey your masters. This black slave sermon is quite different. Lazarus. What him talk about the Jesus and all them disciples would follow him after Jesus raised him from the dead? Lazarus make the best preacher man, cause Lazarus see the dead thing, him see what coming. Lazarus' name is from the Hebrew man. That mean, God is my help. And God sure helped him that day, and stir up the hornet too. Jesus so loved Lazarus that if him was there when him sick by the devil, Jesus heal him quick, and him not make them masters so mad. Cause Jesus be freeing people from suffering and death, and no thing the free man hate more than freedom. Today, Jesus still making the free man mad, cause they so wicked they rather keep them slave than to listen him what raised the dead from the tomb. They hard in the heart like Pharaoh, but Jesus, on Moses, come to deliver the children from bondage in Egypt land, down in the south. And the good book don't say no more about Lazarus, but this too hard for the free man. So the free man say, "Oh, Lazarus flee the death plot by them wicked men in the north, and come here to the south. Well, Paul the Apostle make him the first bishop, with him all the fancy clothes and everything what his mama don't give him." But Southman Lazarus never smile, cause him die and come down to Hades, and there no thing to smile about. Even when him died a second time, Lazarus don't stop there. The free man take the bone and take far to Constantine and even to them Russian. But the Northman say this a lie. Lazarus and them two sisters, they banished to sea by them enemy of the Christian in the Southland. But God saved Lazarus, and him become the first bishop in the Northland. The limb beheaded by them bad Roman from the south what killed Jesus. And that still don't stop with the 9-life thing, cause the Northman take Lazarus' bone and think traveling too. But the Southman brag they got the Lazarus head. What they say is better than the leg or the breast or the wing in the north. And all the time, old Lazarus, him just laugh at the free man. But him only laugh inside, cause Lazarus see the dead thing. Him see what coming, and that no thing to smile about. This next poem just emerged out of my frustration with the daily grind of divisive propaganda that I see in much of the United States, and unfortunately many Christians getting caught up in it, and in which I see nothing of the grace and the beauty of Jesus himself. One of the goals of this poem was simply to do a lot of showing rather than telling. Prayer for nothing. No fusillade of jackhammers laying cover for invading troops of buildings, and streets walled off to all collateral damage. No politicians like barkers at a carnival, passing out buttons and balloons and tickets to grotesque things you can't turn your eyes from. No flying monkeys expelling out of every conspiratorial talk show orifice. No faith the size of a bullet. I could go on, Lord, but at this point, I'd be happy if nothing happened today.
Hello, my name is Ruslana Westerlund, and I am an adjunct faculty at both the College of Arts and Sciences and Graduate School of Professional Studies. I am Ukrainian, and of course, as a Ukrainian, I've been dealing with trauma of the invasion of my country and the genocide of my people. My family is in Ukraine. Right now they're safe, but people aren't really safe in Ukraine when so many atrocities are perpetrated against the entire nation. I spent many days reflecting on the events and processing them. I process all these events through poetry whenever I have time or energy to write. When the war started, I found myself struggling to express my understanding of the war because I found that I don't speak the language of war. And as a linguist, I always reflect on how language in our life grows as we grow, because language changes as new experiences come into our lives or as we seek them out. And because I have not experienced war, I struggle to find the language of war to communicate on the news, with media, and in other ways. So I wrote this poem on the first day of war, Learning the Language of War, 2/24/2022. Language is experience. How do you name things without experience? I don't have any language for war because I didn't experience war. I have language for education, for linguistics, for praying, for celebrating, for encouraging, for mentoring and supporting. I have language for sourdough, for gardening, for planting and harvesting, for loving and living, for cooking and fermenting. I know the language of peace and not the language of war. Today was the day for learning the language of war. I learned it in Ukrainian by talking to my family in Cherkasy, Rivne, Kyiv, Vinnytsia. I learned it in English by talking to the reporters. I'm bilingual in the language of war. The Kyiv city lit up with explosions. Київське небо засяяло від вибухів. My cousin enlisted as a volunteer in the Ukrainian army. Мій двоюрідний брат пішов добровольцем в армію. We heard rockets flying overhead, but we didn't recognize that sound. Ми чули, як ракети пролетіли над головою, і ми не впізнали того звуку. Gasoline is being rationed, 20 liters to save the rest for the army. Бензин роздають по 20 літрів, а решта для армії. The stores are empty, no salt, no matches. У магазинах немає нічого, ні солі, ні сірників. There are no bomb shelters in our village. У нашому селі немає бомбосховища. The root cellar is damp and cold, but it's safe. У льоху холодно й мокро, але безпечно. I wonder what language of war I will learn tomorrow. Another poem that I will read to you, I wrote way before the war started, December or January, if I'm not mistaken, and it got published in Language magazine. This poem was in response to many questions that Ukrainians often have to tackle over and over again, questions that make our Ukrainian identity invisible, such as, is that accent of yours from Russia? Is your name Russian? How does Ukrainian compare to Russian? And seemingly innocent questions like those make us invisible, and we have to prove our identity in ourselves and our worth to the rest of the world over and over and over again. So I sat down and wrote this poem. What does it mean to ask, how does Ukrainian compare with Russian? To ask how does Ukrainian compare to Russian is to admit that you've heard of Russian, but didn't realize that Ukrainian was even a language. It is not your own fault. It's a consequence of many years of linguicism. To ask how does Ukrainian compare to Russian seems so innocent and so curious, and yet it is so tiring for Ukrainians to keep repeating the same thing over and over again. Yes, they are similar in some of the lexicon and yet so different because we have 16 words for the word to open, depending on what it is we're opening, while Russian just has one. To ask how does Ukrainian compare to Russian is to insinuate that languages can peacefully coexist as siblings in the same East Slavic language family, as if languages are a pure linguistic phenomenon, not intertwined with people, politics, and power. If you ask, how does Ukrainian compare to Russian, be ready and willing to learn new words like linguicide, language suppression, banned language, linguicism, language status, linguistic inferiority, and events like the Synod of the Russian Patriarchal Church prohibits printing and using the Ukrainian bukvar, an alphabet book, in 1769. Prohibition on translating books into Ukrainian. Banning of printing of Ukrainian spiritual and popular education literature. Banning of theatrical performances and printing of Ukrainian texts on sheet music. Limiting the use of Ukrainian in higher education. Andropov's order in 1983 to increase salaries of Russian language teachers. If you ask how does Ukrainian compare to Russian, be ready and willing to learn that according to some Russian linguists, Ukrainian does not even hold the status of a language and has been reduced to a mere dialect of the peasant people who are a bunch of rebels and farmers who can't let go of their land. But they forgot that language is a dialect with an army, and Ukrainians do have an army. If you ask how does Ukrainian compare to Russian, be ready and willing to learn that the official language of the Ukrainian people was in the minority status for over 70 years, which eventually led to the Russian being established as the official language of Ukraine in 1990. If you ask how does Ukrainian compare to Russian, be ready and willing to learn that children like me in the 1980s grew up with linguistic inferiority if they were not fluent in Russian, and when playing dolls, the cool dolls from the city spoke Ruski, and the peasant dolls from the village, selo, spoke Ukrainian. If you ask how does Ukrainian compare to Russian, be ready and willing to learn that students like me never had a chance to contribute our knowledge in our native language, because in 1970 the Soviet government ordered for all dissertations and major theses to be written in Russian, thus distributing knowledge only to the Russian readers. If you ask how does Ukrainian compare to Russian, be ready and willing to learn of the centuries of regimes ruling over Ukraine, trying to destroy its language over the span of 337 years, from 1654 to 1991, with 60 prohibitions in total. To ask how does Ukrainian compare to Russian, aren't they very similar? But no one asks in return how does English compare to German? How does French compare with Spanish? Because they don't drag with themselves disputed territory, conflict with Russia. We are a sovereign nation whose existence Putin denies. Donbas region, eastern Ukraine, Russian troops massing at the eastern border. Thank you.
My name is Gwen Larson, and I have the privilege of reading some poetry written by my Swedish grandma, Signe Olsen Peterson. She was born in 1890 in Sweden. She was the third of 8 children in a very poor family. And when she was 21, she decided she wanted to immigrate to North America. She came to Port Arthur, Canada, and became a housemaid. And it was there that she began writing many, many poems because she was ill-treated by that family. In 1918, she came to Bethel Academy, and there she enrolled in some writing and some language classes. She has written nearly 400 items of poetry and essays. For those of you that have been around Bethel quite a while, Dr. G.W. Carlson and I share this grandma. And he was very instrumental in collecting and finding her published poems, and her writings reflect her love for family and friends, her faith in Christ, and her hope in heaven. So I have just a couple short poems I want to share with you. from her journey as a Christian. The first one is called Increase My Faith. Dear Lord, increase my faith enough to fully trust in thee, whenever the path seems steep and rough which thou hast given me. And when I seek a place to fill, endeavor for the good, that is according to thy will, as I have understood. Increase my faith then, Lord, I pray, that doubts and fears may cease, and cannot steal my strength away, nor rob me of my peace. Teach me to go with trusting heart and always do my best, remembering that when I've done my part, you, Lord, will do the rest. The second one is a prayer that she wrote in 1945. Her two sons enrolled in the Navy at the very end of World War II, and one of those sons was my dad. She wrote a prayer for her sons, and when this was published in 1945, she received many, many notes of thanks from other military moms that were so thankful for this prayer because it was also the prayer on their hearts. It's entitled, A Prayer for My Sailor Boys. O commit it not against me, Lord, I pray, that I two names have singled out, to bring before the throne of grace each day and specially talk to thee about. For these two names are pointing out my boys that were removed from home and friends and called upon to serve without a choice and faced with others the supreme demands. Thou knowest, Lord, that they are both thine own, and thus I leave them in thy care. Help them to realize they are not alone, but sense thy presence everywhere. Grant them thy special strength to stand, however trying that may be. And when the day is over, may they rest secure, safely hid in thee. Prevent deceiving ways and forms of sin they'd find displays in wicked might, from causing threatening doubts to enter in, and rob them of their faith in right. Reveal thy pleasure to some special way when challenge meets their loyalty, that they may know that it will richly pay to serve and stay true to thee. Whatever they may be called on to endure upon their home field or abroad, may they be kept in faith, remaining pure and never lose their hold on God. And when this battle cry has ceased to roar and peace again has gained control, Lord, bring them home to us once more, unharmed in body and in soul. So count it not against me, Lord, I pray, for singling out just these two names. They only represent the rest this day that's uttermost in all our claims. And on this common ground I blend my voice and take my stand to intercede with all the mothers of our precious boys, that Christ may fill their every need. The next one is a story that has an earthly story and a heavenly story. It's called I Have the Key. 'Twas late when little John came home one night. His heart was fearful as he learned his plight. The door was locked and he was left outside without a sheltering place where he could hide. The darkness scared him as he lingered there, confused and shivering in the frosty air, barred from the wealth home had for him in store by that one locked and closely fitted door. As from his lonely heart there rose a cry, the sound of footsteps to his ear drew nigh. A voice called out, "Be not afraid of me, I am your father, and I have the key." The key was turned, and from the dreary night John entered into warmth and love and light, safe and protected by that same closed door that kept him trembling in the cold before. Our Heavenly Father, too, calls out the name to his beloved ones that bear his name. Be not afraid, my son, I have the key to every door that severs you from me. The painful things that you are passing through, their aim and purpose still unknown to you, to all of them I have the key also. On the triumphant day I'll let you know. Come in and rest in my abundant grace. Take in my presence your abiding place. I'm granting you to watch me turn the key, if while you wait, you but stay close to me. And the last one is a small story. I'm sure you will recognize the Bible story. It's called Fishing in the Night. They had been fishing all night long without a single catch as gain. These skillful men, so brave and strong, had spent their ardent toil in vain. Their eyes were on their empty nets, their thoughts on mutual losses dwelled. The unforeseen potential threats, the future for them all now held. Their grave concern did so obscure their vision that they failed to see when Christ appeared, they were not sure, and scarcely dared to trust 'twas he. Not any of them could discern that he had watched their weary plight, and awaited for them to return to cease their struggle in the night. At break of dawn he spoke just when despair was hiding all the light, and said, "Cast out your nets again, according to my word of might." At once the yield was multiplied, their nets were filled and held no more, and with the master at their side, they stood securely on the shore. There he had strengthening food prepared, in peace he gently bade them dwell, assured for all their needs he cared, and in his presence all is well. He's watching now as he did then, whenever the night is dark and grim, and guides our storm-tossed course till when we're safely reached the shore with him. Our next reader is Hannah Smason.
So I had to memorize this poem in my very first semester here at Bethel, and now it is my very last semester here at Bethel, so I thought it'd be a fun full circle. This is Sonnet 97 by William Shakespeare. How like a winter hath my absence been from thee, the pleasure of the fleeting year. What freezings have I felt, what dark days seen, what old December's bareness everywhere. And yet this time removed was summer's time, the teeming autumn big with rich increase, bearing the wanton burthen of the prime, like widowed wombs after their lord's decease. Yet this abundant issue seemed to me but hopes of orphans and unfrothered fruits. For summer and his pleasures wait on thee, and thou away the very birds are mute. Or, if they sing, 'tis with so dull a cheer that leaves look pale, dreading the winter's near. Next up we have John Connerton. Poem.
This is amazing. Really amazing. I was going to do a song, but I chickened out. So next time, maybe. I have 3 poems. Time me, 5 minutes. These are ones that I wrote. The first has a little bit of a chess thing, if you play chess. It's called End Game. At her gentle passing, gracious she, with quiet loss, most precious ebbs away. Life's moments, irretrievable, no plea, nor reparation offered, time is queen. And gain is measured only in the soul. Though pain may mark us, threaten to erase, one play only left us by default, love, which covers all, our only grace. Checkmate. Doesn't always work to play chess with God, I guess, right? Okay, the next, counting the cost. How do I love thee? Let me count the cost of selfish tranquility for love's sake might be lost, of hoarded gold and compromise and keeping of the peace, of faith's bold venture neutralized by what I won't release. The conflict I'd avoid is real and tears my peace apart. O Lord, receive and help me heal my much divided heart. This one's a little longer, but not too long. Okay. 7 days, a retelling. Before ever night's canvas framed the stars, a master painter is, with all things in mind. Before ever sound to carry song, a celestial singer waits in the wings. Before even space for galaxies to describe, a brooding sculptor ponders Orion's form. When, without time for moments to mark, even so a moment came. Some call it bang, others word. Never mind. Impossibly, it came. Night unfurling in starry glory, and deep calling out sonorously unto deep, so time began, carrying in its surging wake the shape of every conceivable momentary thing. Past, present, future, called to be in one fell swoop, painter, singer, sculptor proclaim as one, I am. So, can it then be that in all this measureless wonder, on the crust of one speck of cosmic dust, smaller than all imaginings, with bloody cross as picture, podium, pedestal, eyes that look like mine should hold my gaze, while voice that I can hear should utter to clear understanding self-same words to me? John, I am. Improbable, say the wise. Impossible, say the learned. Hysterical, say the scoffers. Sad, say the self-reliant. Despicable, say the self-righteous. And I agree with all. Yet, impossibly, in my desperate need, I find beneath everything a glowing, festal doubt, encompassing all other doubts. And to my joyful astonishment, discover that I believe this true, and that to my very core. And of all impossibilities, this weary sinner's heart can fathom nothing more wondrous that could ever be. David Stewart.
Thank you, John. I'm going to read a couple of selections from a poet I just recently discovered, Brian Bilston, who is known as the Poet Laureate of Twitter. First selection is entitled, Why I Have Never Read War and Peace. 10 excuses. 1, I've always meant to read it. I really like the sound of it. I had set aside the 90s, but never quite got round to it. 2, I won't read the first half. It's because I'm a pacifist. I hope one day it gets abridged, but without all the nasty bits. 3, The Prince, too small to read. It makes my interest dwindle. I tried to read the ebook, but it was too big for my Kindle. 4, I'm afraid it's not for me. I loved Tolstoy 1, 2, and 3, but I won't read this because there's no Woody or Buzz. 5, I think I left it on the bus, or perhaps my dog ate it. Although it may have been the cat, She thinks Tolstoy's overrated. 6. I've been stuck on the first line since 1999. 7. One day I'm sure I'll read it. That has always been the plan, but my concentration wavers and I have a short attention. Spanish omelet? Fabulous. 8. I find it too weighty. I feel like I'm 80. It's not so much the length, I just don't have the strength to read more than a page at a sitting. Some say it's unput-downable, but unpick-upable is more fitting. 9. I would like to read it. I really have the itch. But the characters' names all sound the same, and I won't know which is which. 10th and last. I fully intend to start it soon. It's just a matter of when. For the last 10 years, I've been reading around it. The jacket, the blurb, the ISBN. Finally, and again, Brian Bilson is known as the Poet Laureate of Twitter, a poem called For We Shall Stare at Mobile Phones. Streets shrug as we roam back to our homes. Obstacle courses of lamp posts and cones, for we shall stare at mobile phones. Landmarks languish and attractions close, statues, museums, cathedrals disowned, for we shall stare at mobile phones. Reading gets shelved, poetry and prose, the dusty rebuke of neglected tomes, for we shall stare at mobile phones. Conversation falters, dries up, unflows. Feelings once said lie buried, unknown, for we shall stare at mobile phones. Yes, we shall stare at mobile phones when we're together and when we're alone, for we shall stare at mobile phones. And when we die, let us hope that they're thrown into the pit with our crumbling bones. As a postscript, this poem was sent for my iPhone. Thank you so much for all being here. Thank you so much for Rhonda for coordinating this.
I'd just like to thank everyone who so generously shared poems with us and for the rest of you who came to hear them. Thank you.